So in this podcast, I want to talk about alchemy. Now, alchemy, it has a very broad term in the sense that people often conflate it with a sense of magic or a sense of transformation in terms of the philosopher's stone and things like that. But I'm not going to go into any of the details that you can find online regarding what alchemy is, because alchemy is not considered science. It's considered pseudoscience, like magical thinking, etc. Okay? But since we are the principles of organized complexity, we examine things not from the point of view of the mainstream. We examine things on their own merit. Now, the word alchemy has its etymological root in the word chemi. You see, because the word is made up of two parts. There's al, and then there's chemi. The al is of Arabic origin, okay? It's a way of saying like the something, the this, the that, okay? It's like a way to address like a noun or something like that. But the interesting aspect is chemi, because chemi, it is in the spelling today, it is called Chemy. But the more accurate spelling is Khemy, because that word chemi comes from the ancient Black African Chemetian root, kemet. Now, kemet or kemt, when the Greeks arrived, they called that kemt chemi, Khemy. But the meaning behind both are the same in terms of black. Now, modern day Egyptology tells you that kemt doesn't mean, it means black, but it refers to, when they say the black land, it refers to the color of some mud or Nile, the silt developed by the Nile, or the silt deposited by the Nile when it floods. This is fundamentally untrue. In fact, this is an insult, to be honest, if you really think about it. Because if you see, one of the reasons why the Nile Valley civilization is noted around the world is because it's a very high culture. There's almost nothing like it anywhere else in the world from the ancient world, because it's not only was it well preserved, the recording and documentary is extensive, and this created a problem for anti-black racists. Because, you know, once the order was given for the enslavement of black Africans, it was given by the Pope, then in the 15th century, Pope Nicholas. And in order to facilitate the enslavement of black Africans, they had to destroy black African history. Now, that's not going to be the topic of this conversation either, because what you consider to be the European Renaissance, you know, a period of so-called enlightenment, etc. Well, I'm here to tell you that it was not. There was no such thing. Do you understand? One does not enlighten into falsehoods. One does not enlighten into thievery, okay? That's the opposite of what enlightenment is supposed to be. Now, the Egyptologists were given the task of disinformation. Why? To separate black Africans from their past. It's not something that is current. It's something that's been going on since the age of Greece, ancient Greece. Because in the Nile Valley civilization, one of the reasons why that civilization eventually packed up is because of constant attacks and invasions. Do you understand? So at some point in time, a decision was made, because the other option was to fashion the type of weapons that would allow the repelling of barbarians. But the problem with that is you become the barbarians. You become like the barbarians, so that the fashioning of weapons, once you have brought them out, you can't take them back in. There will always be a source of solution for that type of problem. Okay? It's just the way that these things are. The barbarian forces you to come down to his level. And once you come down to that level, you cannot stay at the height that you were in anymore. If you look at the Nile Valley civilization, one of the things that is mysterious about the whole civilization is that they achieved a lot. And the instruments with which they used to achieve a lot, nobody knows what they are. Nobody can find them. So you see things that look as if they are machine chiseled or machine cut, okay? You see things that are literally impossible to do without sophisticated equipment, right? But you don't find the equipment. You see the things, but you don't find the equipment. Why? It's because that civilization, that's a black African civilization. It was a civilization that understood organized complexity. I tell you that organized complexity is a physics of blackness, and you think I'm just using that as a euphemism. It's not. It's literally a physics of blackness. So when the people called themselves Kemt, they weren't referring to their land or to the color of a soil or anything like that. They were telling you that they are black. It's not just the way that they are. It is the unity of all knowledge in the universe. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's literally the expression of the universe. And since they are a part of the universe, they are expressed in the same way. That's what Kemt means. Kemet. So they call themselves the Kempnu. It's basically just the ones who understand. Because understanding is the understanding of blackness. Now, you hear a lot of people say, oh, but how can you say something like that? Well, I can say something like that because it is mathematically verified. Do you understand what I'm saying? We've published all the proofs. You can't go and examine them anymore because I've shut that down because of the amount of thievery that is going on. People steal the work and they don't give credit. They go and reframe it and put their name on it and claim originality. This is, but there's nothing you can really expect from people who are themselves just like existential trash. Okay? Now, what I'm about to describe to you is an example of that existential trash because it's something so insidious. By the time you finish listening to this, you should be worried, okay, about the mental state of the people that you share this planet with. Now, the Egyptologists said that the ancient Kemetians named themselves after the color of mud. But if you ask the Egyptologist, why is it that we cannot find any example of any culture, any human culture that reached any type of height? Why is it that they didn't name themselves after the color of mud or any other stupid thing like that? Look at Britain, for instance. Britain says Great Britain. They added the word great to their name. Do you know why? It's because they plundered the entire world, raped the entire world, pillaged it, burned it, looted it, and having amassed the wealth of nations, blood-soaked in every ramification, they appended the word great to themselves. Why? Because a people who come from extreme impoverishment, food is all that is important. So once they can eat, they have achieved something. Once they can have enough food to last eons, then they can pat themselves on the back because it takes a certain level of awareness to consider the way in which you attain food, right or wrong. But when you're coming from the lowest of the low, just being able to eat is just enough satisfaction for you. Do you understand? Why didn't the British name themselves after the color of the River Thames? After all, shipping was one of the ways in which they plundered the entire world. Why didn't they do that? It's because that's not what people do, especially not people who actually have a high sense of enlightenment and culture. The Kempnu did not name themselves after mud. A recent example I want to use is the term sub-Saharan African. That term was basically created by Europeans and Arabs. Well, these are the same two people that have been trying to take over Africa for a very long time. All the invasions that brought down Kemet, it was from these same people, the Greeks and the Arabs. Do you understand? So you have to really understand that there is nobody else on this planet whose identity is referred to with a prefix, sub. You have to put this within the context of these two same groups of people, Arabs and Europeans. They've been trying to designate the black African as a subhuman in every way that they possibly can for thousands of years. Why do you think they've been trying to do that? And now, coincidentally, they found a name for you that says, you are sub-Saharan. Sub. Do you understand? And they attach other labels to you too. They call you third world and all that crap. You think they do not know what they're doing. Now, let's bust the entire bubble. Because these two groups of people are nothing but the world's biggest criminals. And as a result of that, they're the lowest of the low. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay? They represent an impoverishment in human nature that is very difficult to combat because of the origins. Okay? Now, the word alchemy is basically the black. And when it is studied as a science, the black science. Do you know that all of if you read the history of science, it's almost certain that the text you will read centers European history as the history of science. So you have a brief beginning in this description of Greece. They tell you that Greece founded this, Greece founded that, Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, Eratosthenes, all sorts of, Archimedes and all that. Lies. The Greeks were students in ancient Kemet. When whatever they learned, they went back to themselves, to their home, whatever, and named it after themselves. Some of them were good enough to actually say that they were students in Egypt. Everything they learned at the feet of Kemetic masters. But most of them didn't. They just named the damn thing after themselves. And you can use your brain here if you want. Look at the issue of Pythagoras. Pythagoras was an ancient Greek. Yeah? They say that today he's remembered for the mathematical formalism for describing a right-angled triangle. The question you should be asking is, if this thing came from Pythagoras, which means it came from ancient Greece, then how the heck do you have a literal physical example of right-handed triangles that predates ancient Greece by tens of thousands of years in what you now call today the pyramids? Do you really think that you can build such a structure without understanding the mathematical relationship behind right-angled triangles? Is that what you really think? Do you know the precision that was built into that thing? Do you know? Pick up a text, because they don't hide that, because they've managed to convince the entire world that somehow this came from them. Do you understand what I'm saying? They've managed to convince the entire world with their Egyptological nonsense and their falsehoods and their lies. Their media, they will tell you that the ancient Cometians had more in common with them, Europeans, than the black Africans in Africa. All right? Have you ever noticed that the ancient Cometians, in all their reliefs and their paintings, they always showed their men topless? They wore ornaments on their top bodies, but they never wore shirts. They didn't wear any coverings. Do you realize the type of climate that you have in that North Africa? Do you know what that climate is? It's an extraordinary amount of ultraviolet radiation. I mean, these are people whose organizing principle revolved around the sun. Do you think there's any other human being who can live in that region, topless, for thousands of years without dying? Do you really think so? I mean, the Arabs wrap themselves from head to toe. They wrap their heads with turbans. Then they wrap themselves from head to toe, because the Arabs are Mediterraneans. They're cousins to Europeans. I'm not even going to entertain the discussion regarding Europeans, because that's just silly. There's no European who can survive there topless. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is the truth, okay? Now, the reason why that ancient black African civilization collapsed is because it was continuously under attack. And there's just so much you can repel without falling into barbarism yourself. So a decision was made, and it was a very, very difficult decision. But the people did not see any other way. The decision was made to end the civilization, to allow the barbarians in through the gate. Why? Because it was determined that the only reason why these people are barbarians is because they lack learning. They lack understanding. They are barbarians. They don't know anything. So let us share with them what we know. What we know will affect them. And let's see how they can remain barbarians. You understand? Now, for me, this is an assumption. I have put this narrative, this explanation I've just given, I've put it together based on circumstantial evidence. So there's still a little element of speculation in the why, not in the what, because we clearly know that the civilization ended, because eventually after a while you began to see Greeks and Europeans sitting on the throne of Kemet. But for them, all they saw was a throne. I mean, think about how kings are crowned in Europe. You know, the kings were original feudal lords. You know what feudalism is? It's where one man decides that he owns everything and everybody else is a serf. Okay? Now, the thing that typifies the European peninsula is that it doesn't have enough land. Neither does it have enough natural resources. So everything that is good or useful becomes involved in some type of hyper-competitive enterprise, where people slaughter each other, wars, all right? And in that type of environment where people are constantly at war with each other, the tools of war experience rapid development compared to everywhere else where there's peace. Because necessity is the mother of invention, they say, isn't it? Now, out of Black Africa came knowledge. Because remember, if you've been listening to my podcast, you would have heard at some point in time that the Kemetian civilization, it wasn't just located at the Nile Valley. The decision to locate that civilization on the Nile Valley was a strategic one. Why? Because the Nile, you see, let's put it this way. Africa is like a huge island. You can think of it as the biggest island in the world. It is completely surrounded by water on all sides. And that means that it is very difficult to invade. Why? Because the people will see you coming. It's like what the United States enjoys today when it has two oceans bordering it on each side. All right? So that's what encouraged the United States to build its power around its navy. Because as long as it has control over those two waters, then it cannot really be invaded. There's just so much you can do from the air. You understand? So Africa was like that. The only weakness, tactical weakness, was in the land bridge that led from North Africa to the easternmost part of Northeast Africa, which is the part that now blends with Arabia. That's the only land bridge. Now, there used to, occasionally every few thousand years, another type of land bridge will emerge, the one to Iberia. But that one is always mostly permanently covered with water. So it oscillates a few thousand years here and there. So that land bridge that passes through the Sinai out into the northeasternmost part of Africa, right? Because all of that part, if you go to the furthest part of Madagascar and draw a straight line up, you will see the border of Africa. Okay, then after that, you now have Arabia. So that Nile Valley civilization was tactically located there, so that when you are coming into the main African continent, what you come across shocks the living daylight out of you. Because now you have entered the lands of the black people. And that means something. It's not in today's reality when you say black people, you immediately begin to think of races and racism. There's no such thing as races. It's a totally crazy conception imagined by people who are literally impoverished in their consciousness. Because what the hell is it? Do you know that the human being is one of the only creatures on this planet that is almost entirely identical from human to human? Do you know that? Such a convergence, it cannot easily be explained. Why did every other type of human disappear, leaving only one almost identical type of human? It's because the human is a prescriptive principle. That's what it is. And that prescriptive principle is the physics of blackness. I don't have time to go into the details now because I've published all the mathematical physics behind the whole thing. So, I've had to remove it from circulation, obviously, because these criminal-minded people are just, it's all about thievery. That's the story that we're telling here. Because out of Black Africa came a tremendous amount of knowledge. Tremendous. They started fighting each other over it, Because if you think of it, the city that Alexander the Butcher ultimately named after himself, that city the translation is the city of the soul of Ptah, or Ptah. I don't know how people pronounce it. It's a Ptah, all right? Now, what does that sound like? You know what tar is? Coal tar that is used to line the roads and all that. It is derived from crude oil. You know what crude oil is? You call it fossil fuels and all that. So in order to get your diesel, petrol and everything, you take crude oil and you distill it. That is, you boil it, and different parts of it distills at different temperatures. You collect it in a refractory column. Now, coal tar is a kind of base residue in all of that. But the point is that the city of Ptah is the essence of blackness. Eventually, somebody now called it Alexandria. What the hell is an Alexandria? What does it mean? You think people couldn't name that city after themselves? They didn't. They anthropomorphized it because it's a place where you go to learn about a certain aspect of reality, a certain aspect of nature. And then here comes this butcher, this mass murderer, and he names it after himself. Why? What were they doing there in the first place? Is that place Macedonia? They came for something. What did they come for? Knowledge. That's what all the barbarians have always come for, because they see knowledge as the route to power. Because for them, a king is somebody who is very like a mass murderer, a butcher, literally. The one who can take everything for himself is so strong, right? Then they put a crown on his head. That's not the way it was in ancient Black Africa. What they crowned was knowledge, a sense of knowing, because that is what brings the people into enlightenment, into balance. So everything always starts from Ma'at, balance, okay? I was having a conversation the other day and I told somebody, I said, Ma'at is one of the oldest concepts in human civilization. I mean, this civilization is 78,000 years old. Can you imagine the kind of things that they knew? Ma'at, the way I broke it down a few days ago, and I think I have a podcast on that called Equidistribution, is that if you look at the original sculpture or painting of Ma'at, it's a black woman with a feather, an ostrich feather in her head, and she's kneeling down, but the way she's kneeling down, one knee is raised up from the ground, and the other knee is on the ground. So that with her body, which is straight as she's kneeling, and with one knee on the ground and one knee in between her body and the ground, that knee in between makes a 45-degree angle. Because what she's representing, she's telling you that existence has 3 dimensions. Do you know that in today's physics, until I published the mathematical proof last year, nobody had a solution to that problem? People imagine that the universe has so many dimensions. In fact, in string theory, you have as many as I don't know how many dimensions. Because we first published the proof in 2011. But last year we formalized it as a preprint and we posted it. The proof, the mathematical proof that confirms that the universe is restricted to 3 dimensions only. And from there we're able to derive all the fundamental constants of nature from the proof. Generically, no curve fitting, no assumptions. No. We just let the mathematics do the speaking, okay? And the mathematics itself is rooted in the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Prime numbers, alright? Because what you're looking at is not prime numbers. You are looking at the physics of blackness. And I'm going to make the connection in this podcast, okay? Don't let the world gaslight you, because they're all criminals. Their history is a fabricated history. It's all lies. You really need to go and do the work to understand this, okay? Then you need to understand why they did it, because that reason is still ongoing till today. Because that is the rationale for the corrections, the global corrections that are taking place right now all over the world. All right. They are there to restore truth. And the truth is rooted back into what I'm telling you right now. The decision that was made to bring down the civilization so that the knowledge can flow into the rest of the world, to civilize the rest of the world, to change them. Because it is assumed that people act stupid because they don't know any better. Well, I'm going to tell you the story of people who know they don't care, because they're wicked. That wickedness is more important to them But what they have done is that they have triggered the corrections, because you see, you cannot distort the laws of nature, the laws of physics. If you stretch them to one end like a pendulum, they will naturally correct this by swinging to the other extreme until equilibrium can be restored. That is the law. Do you understand? That's what Ma'at is trying to tell you. But Ma'at itself came from a deep cosmological physics about the entire universe. The fact that the universe is rooted in 3D. You see the arms of Ma'at, they are outstretched, but they are not totally straight. They create a hyperbola. Why? Because the outstretched arms, they are symbolized with feathers underneath them to show you what? That the universe is expanding. The hyperbolic nature of the arms, the structure, is to tell you that the universe's expansion is accelerating, because that is what hyperbolism, that's what a hyperbola signifies. It's an open universe that is expanding, and the expansion is accelerating. Now, the feather in the middle of our head, what does it signify? It signifies that the net energy expression of the universe is zero, and the only way that can be achieved is through a perfect cancellation. That means a perfect balance. We've proven these things mathematically. We wrote out the complete mathematical proof, complete, from first principles. It's literally, if that is just one thing that a human being did in this life, that is the achievement of a lifetime. We have 250 plus of those types of achievements, all published. It's a tremendous thing, because do you know what a proof of the three-dimensional confinement of the universe is? It means that the entirety of quantum physics is now changed, because the problem in quantum physics today is that people have to forge things. For instance, quantum field theory cannot really tell you how the masses of the fundamental particles are derived. Why? Because there's a problem called a cutoff. You begin to add different contributions of different fields. It goes to infinity. The answer becomes nonsensical. The proof that the universe is three-dimensional bounds the cutoff. It gives it a natural cutoff. If you truly understood how significant this is, all right? But that's a different whatever. Now, this knowledge of ancient Black Africa is what they call alchemy. Is what is studied in all the mystery schools, all the secret societies, everywhere around the world. Now, up until the Middle Ages, it was called alchemy. But ultimately, they transformed the name from alchemy to natural philosophy. From natural philosophy to the sciences that you have today, so that technology can be extracted from it. But do you know that someone like Isaac Newton spent more of his time studying alchemy, the science of black people? Do you know that? Isaac Newton published and wrote more about alchemy than he did for the physics that he's remembered for today. You can say that 25% of his life he spent it doing the physics that he's remembered for today. 75% was spent writing about theology and alchemy. Newton wasn't even considered a scientist in his day, because he spent most of his time on alchemy and theology. John Napier, the inventor of the logarithm, the same thing. Joseph Fourier, the inventor of the heat equation, and he spent 3 years in Egypt. He was obsessed with heat, the sun in Egypt. Because Napoleon took him to Egypt during his invasion of that land. Napoleon took 167 scientists. A few years later, French science began to flourish. You think it's a coincidence? Is that what you really think? John Napier invented the logarithms, right? Yeah, but where did he get the idea from? He spent his entire life studying alchemy. Pick any European scientist in history during this era. They all were studying alchemy. Alchemy is the science of black people. Chemistry, black. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? The Arabs were also studying the same thing. So all those contributions that you hear that Arabs contributed this with mathematics and everything, all plagiarism. All. The same thing with Europeans. Every aspect of it is plagiaristic. It has been plagiarized. And this is the reason why they have pursued anti-black racism. This is, if you want a reason, because Greece represented the first flow of that knowledge outside. The Commissions actually taught the Greeks, but they realized that the Greeks, they couldn't understand anything. Even the most basic concepts, they couldn't understand. All the stories of this world, all the narratives of this world came from black people. It's just that you don't know, because now they call it different things. Because across 78,000 years, black people reached a level of understanding. They ascended. Do you have any idea what that means? They achieved the unification of all knowing, all knowledge, unified into a harmonious oneness. Then they began to anthropomorphize it. One of those examples is Ma'at. One of those examples is the Ankh. You would think that these things are just spiritual. There's nothing like spiritual anything. What you have is mathematics. That's what everything is. But if you are a newbie In mathematics, you still write them as equations. Let me tell you something. A human being can look at an equation. Okay, E is equals to MC squared, right? That's interesting. Very clever. Guess what? It doesn't tell you anything about your own personal reality. So E is equals to MC squared. Big deal. What are you going to have for dinner? Do you know that today you need to eat fish, or you need to eat goat, or you need to eat chicken? Can it help you in your reality such that your wife doesn't divorce you or your husband doesn't leave you? These things don't tell you anything about human reality. So they are only useful for things that you call technology and weapons development. But for the human satisfaction, they don't do anything. That's why you have a lot of high knowledge today. And yet almost everybody you meet, they don't know anything. They're walking around. It's like I call it a zombification of the planet. Even electricity, nobody can tell you what it is. They tell you how it works. They tell you all the things they can do with it. But what is it exactly? Nobody knows. Why? Because the thing that allows people to know what anything is what this modern civilization has banished from human consciousness. And they locked that door by implementing anti-black racism. Anti-black racism is erected as a series of accusations and slanders, a series of lies. And then they work to manufacture evidence to support those lies. And the reason why is because they don't want the black people to remember who they are, or to know what they are, or to know that this universe is literally patterned after what they are. Now, every human being is black because it's impossible for anybody to be any other thing. I mean, think of it. The carbon that is used to make a human being, it comes from carbon stars. The carbon stars produce it as black soot. They spill it out into the universe. That's where every living thing comes from. The laws of the universe, we just told you, we used organized complexity, a physics of blackness, to derive all the constants of nature from first principles. The sixes are in everything, as everything, because that is the unity of all things. That six is black. Do you understand? Because at the end of the day, nature solved all the mathematical problems. That's what makes existence possible. That blackness, that sixness. Do you understand? And if you've been listening to my channel, it's literally almost like the only thing I talk about. So you must know it by now. Well, that's what they have been hiding. So they tell you that black people are low IQ, black people are inferior, black people are this, black. It's a lie. Everything that you call science today, that's why they don't allow black people to become scientists, prominent scientists in this world. You don't have a single example. Go and trace it. Start from Isaac Newton or whoever you want to consider to be early, and start tracing it all the way to the modern day. You will not have any black African scientists on a prestigious level. None. You think it's a coincidence? No. They keep them out because the aim is to convey a kind of message or some type of, it's a manufactured reality because they don't want you to know that science that they're studying is the science of black people. It is the physics of blackness. As long as there is a scientific theorem in this world that is true, then that theorem is a physics of blackness. Are you surprised? Don't be, because it's all about that. Now, some people have less melanin on their epidermis. Then they say, okay, because we have less melanin on our epidermis, we are white. This is absurd. It's like because a solid object casts a shadow on a surface because there's a light source, and then an object can cast a shadow. It's as if you now say that the shadow is the object. This is nonsensical. I mean, there's no human being that has biological cells that produce white pigmentation for your skin. It's impossible. You will never find it because nature is not stupid. The physics doesn't work. Okay? This has nothing to do with hate. It's like me describing the way that chlorophyll works or the way that gravity behaves, and you say it's hateful. Are you kidding me? If you have built a narrative that is stupid like racism around blackness, then that is your fucking problem. It has nothing to do with the way or what blackness really is in itself. I'm even, sometimes I get, do I need to explain this? It's like all green plants coming together, or it's like some segment of green plants coming together saying, you know what? We are going to consider chlorophyll persona non grata. So we're going to start an anti-chlorophyll movement. Excuse me, can you exist without chlorophyll as a plant? Well, that's the same thing going on with blackness. I try to remind people that you see that epidermis, that's your skin. When you were being formed in the womb of your mother, that epidermis was a part of the ectoderm, the same thing as your brain and your entire central nervous system. They were part of one structure. Both structures today, when they're fully developed, both structures, their default setting is melanin. Because even though your skin is pale, you have the same number of melanocytes as a black African person. It's just that the black Africans' melanocytes, they're synthesizing melanin. Yours are not. It doesn't make you less of a human because you have adapted to a different climate. But to now invent a new type of human being around that is completely preposterous. I'll give you an example, or I'll give you the implication. You see, when you say to yourself that you're a white person, do you know what you're actually saying? You're saying that you don't exist, because I've just told you such a thing is impossible. So, because such a thing is impossible, anytime you have a baby with anybody else, nature will do something. It will try to rectify the situation. Why? Because that is what is good. You are a human being that can only exist around the star. And that means that your default setting is to be melanated. Without it, you will die. So how can the goodness of God allow for that? So anytime it encounters a situation where there's a deficiency in that area, it tries to correct it. Because the deficiency is only mapped after an environment. People don't live in frozen, frigid ice ages. It's not a place for human beings. But unfortunately, that's what happened. So that's part of nature, right? So it has to be corrected. And that's what nature tries to do, because nature is a functional intelligence, a supreme functional intelligence. And so a human being arises in this type of condition. And what do? They say, no, we are a special type of people. We are different type of people. And okay, no problem. You say you're white, no problem. But you see, the problem is you cannot mix with anybody else, if that is your philosophy. Because you are afraid that if you mix with anybody else, whatever condition that you are calling yourself disappears. Well, from the point of view of the nature that created you, there's a reason why it is behaving like that. It's trying to keep you alive in the best possible condition. But if you now decide that you have another narrative that you prefer to follow, well, in that case, then it means that you're not going to be able to mix with anybody except people who are exactly like you in that sense. Okay, that's fine. People have a right to live whichever way they want. They have a right to call themselves whichever way they want. But here's the problem. The people who are like that, they don't want to stay in that isolation. They want to go all around the world and plant their flags. How does that work? So you go to someone's home, you plant your flag there, and you build your reality to exclude all of them because you don't want to mix with them, because you don't want to. How does that work? Well, it's all coming from this weird definition where you think that you are some different type of human being. You actually have a lot of anti-black racists telling people that they belong to a different species from black Africans. Listen. For me, my own perspective is that I've already come to the conclusion that these people are sick. It's a clinical insanity. It's a pandemic level clinical insanity. Yeah, because there's no need to look at it as a point of view of, it's driven by envy and hate and all that, but the people don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what they're saying. They don't know what anything really is. They just lie and keep lying, and they keep lying, and they keep lying, and they keep lying till the whole world becomes crazy. Okay? So in order to protect this lie, the origin, the source of human history, the source of all human innovation, because humanity has already reached a level where they have finished knowledge. And so these people decided that they're going to throw all of that away and restart the narrative, so that this time around the narrative will be centered solely around them. So they created whiteness in a way of like an opposition to blackness. You see, but the problem is that one is real, the other is not. It's what is going on today. For instance, if you look at what is going on in the world today, it's about envy and jealousy. So that because black Africans protested, black people in the US and America, they protested anti-black racism. Of course they should. It's an insidious system that's been going on for centuries against them. This is incredible to imagine that anyone can actually pursue such a dumb thing. So the whole world in solidarity protested with them. Well, guess what? It made some people so angry they're looking for they said it's the white counterpart of it all. They had to discredit Mr. George Floyd. They said he committed suicide. They had to discredit COVID. They said it was a pandemic. They discredited everything that they saw. Meanwhile, everything that they saw was orchestrated by the Most High, including the message, Black Lives Matter. Because God wants to remind them of the essence of reality, the city of Ptah. The soul. Because if you don't know that, then you don't know anything at all. You are wandering about in the dark like a zombie. Do you understand? So for them, it's the same thing that's happening in science. The idea is to create what you call modern science. It's supposed to be like the white version. But the white version of what? At the end of the day, when the modern day scientist writes the current state of the universe for you, like the energy budget or the energy structure of the universe, they write certain percentage dark energy, certain percentage dark matter, and they write 4% baryonic matter. Baryonic matter simply means the matter that interacts with light. The matter you can see, the matter you can touch and all that. And they say it's only 4%. Well, excuse me. What do you mean it's only 4%? Yeah, they say 96% of the universe is missing. It's not missing, it's there, but we just can't see it. Really? What is it? Nobody knows. What do you mean nobody knows? Yeah, that's what they're telling you. Now, the reason why they call it dark matter, they say it's because it's unknown. It's because they don't want to tell you what it is. It's not dark anything. It's black. Do you understand? But if they tell you that, you become wise. So you get. And because they don't mess with blackness, they've ostracized blackness away from their reality. So it looks like unknown, because the unknown is an unknown in their conscious awareness, because what else is the universe except your awareness of it? Is there a way to know of the universe without being aware of it? So basically what you're saying is that in your conscious awareness, 96% is unknown. Well, if you score 4% out of a test, you have failed. That's it. It means that you have failed to grasp anything. And the reason why I say this is because the entire plan from ancient Black Africa, as at the time of this withdrawal from the world, was to civilize the rest of the world with knowledge, so that when they come to know what the Black Africans know, their own behavior will change. I don't know if it has worked, but I'm not impressed, because when I look around me, all I see are crazy people. All I see are people who are walking around like zombies, filled with hate and malice, and yet almost every one of them are asleep. They're walking around with their eyes closed. They don't know anything. And as a result of that, they're very easy to manipulate. Very, very easy. They literally respond to a dog whistle. Do you know what it means for a human being to be responding to a dog whistle? You can manipulate them once you just come and you offer them white supremacy in any form, everything else fades in relevance, in importance. All they want is white supremacy. Why? Because it's like a naked person who wants a robe, because there's no human whiteness, and the whole human white supremacy thing is a lie. So every time that truth emerges, they feel very naked. Why? Why should you feel naked? Why have you constructed your own shame? Why? What is the rationale behind it? Are you less of a human because you don't have functional epidermal melanocytes? Does that make you less of a human? You're adapted to a climate, just like everybody else. Well, what's the damn big deal? Does that now necessarily mean that you're now a new type of... Okay, you're a new type of human, right? Then how come you still have babies with humans? Have you seen different species of animals having babies together? It's because it's all bullshit. There are no human races. The prescription for all human beings is blackness. It doesn't care whether you like it or not. It is that way because it is good. That is the understanding of a supreme intelligence. Except you say you know more, okay? If you know more, then present it. Tell us how it would work, the physics of whiteness. Put it down. Tell us. Because all you've been studying, all these people have been studying is the physics of blackness. They just lie about it and they call it different names. They reinvent it, rewrite it, repackage it and give it a new name and claim originality. It's all bullshit. It's all nonsense. Like I said, go and pick any scientist that you want in European history or Arabic history, and we'll verify to you that they're all plagiarists. Now, the original Africans did not write these things in equations, but there's a reason why these people spent a long time studying it. They're looking for insights in the way that the thing is explained. Why? Because unlike today's explanations that are very, would I say, one-dimensional in some sense, the Kemetians were not like that. They understood things so holistically. One thing can mean thousands of things and it will all be accurate. In some sense, you look at it, that is like the equation, but it is written in human terms. Because an equation, for instance, is meant to condense reality into a simplified form. Well, if you look at the anthropomorphication that you call Ma'at, you are looking at the entire cosmos, the entire laws of the universe, condensed into one structure. And the way that it is written, you can translate that structure from the mathematics to human awareness seamlessly. Because the balance that Ma'at is talking about is not a spiritual balance per se. It's a mathematical balance. It has a very precise form. And we worked it all out and we published it. The precise cancellations that keep the balance of the universe, the net energy expression 0. It's a very precise thing. There's no ambiguity in it at all. It proves and demonstrates that absolute unity is the state of all the universe. It cannot be anything else. There is no possibility of destabilization. None. Except the whole of mathematics is bullshit. And it's not. Do you understand? And so the next time somebody comes and starts telling you all sorts of nonsense about we invented everything, Africans did not even invent the wheel, just look at them for what they really are. Zombies. Programmed zombies. These are not people. They're in a state of bondage, severe bondage, okay? Because in my podcast, where I talk about how people's perceptions, the way that your brain behaves, the way that your awareness, your self-consciousness behaves is patterned after your environment, the environment of your ancestry. Because if you think about it, you eat your environment, you drink your environment. When you die, you are buried in your environment. You know, it's literally father and mother come together, they have a baby. In order to assemble the baby, you are eating from that environment. So ultimately, you come to behave like your environment. And therein lies the problem. You see, because the environment that created the attenuation of the ability to synthesize melanin, it was a very, very poor environment. Because it was typified by an ice age. And that's one of the most difficult environments that this earth can form. Nothing lives there. Very few organisms, very few creatures live in that type of environment. And the ones that live there, they are very, very aggressive because life is hard there. Food is scarce. So you can imagine human beings living in that environment. There's nothing to eat. And you can't have agriculture because the land is fully glaciated. So there's nowhere to grow anything really. So what do you think people ate? They ate themselves. But you don't know what that is. It's a very traumatic situation for a human being because that's what we're suffering from in the world today. All right? Just because it is renamed into capitalism doesn't mean that it no longer reflects its origin. Its origin is cannibalism. The way of life that feeds on human beings, hunts them and feeds on them. It's an atrocious thing, okay? And God has issued a very explicit warning. End it. What you saw in 2020 was an explicit warning. Very explicit. It couldn't be clearer than that. Now it's up to you if you want to go and change the meaning of all of that. It doesn't matter because what does it matter? When you close your eyes, does the sun disappear? So human beings who are thinking that all that matters is what they say or what they agree amongst themselves. That's not the way science works. Science is not a democracy. It's not an agreement amongst people. Okay? It's not a consensus, even though you need a peer review to publish any paper. None of my papers are peer reviewed. I don't submit them for peer review because you know what? Fuck you. I don't need anybody to tell me whether it is correct or not. It is, you know? I'm not saying that the peer review process is not important, but you know, you have to draw the line somewhere. The type of things I write about, they're not going to be peer-reviewed by anybody. I mean, look at even the research on melanin. It stalls. You won't get published. You won't get a grant. You won't get anything. And that's just something that is easily established in a laboratory. Have you heard the story of Sheikh Anta Diop? All the frustrations they did to him? This man was a trained scientist. He wanted to perform those experiments. He did perform some of them, but they made it extremely difficult for him to publish anything. Then it's now about the principles of organized company that literally reveals the entirety of knowledge and unifies it into oneness as a physics of blackness. Which journal am I going? I submitted some of my papers to a couple of journals. Some of them wrote me back rejecting it and telling me never to submit to them again. So that was when I just drew the line. I said, you know what? To hell with it. If something is true, it's true. It doesn't need 20 people to agree on it. Okay? So I don't bother myself with all those things now. All my papers are now being turned into patents. Technologies for the future. Because we're going to replace everything. You think this computer is the best you can do? You haven't seen anything yet. We're changing everything. Everything. The whole world. From what you define as technology. We're changing all of it. We're going to take everything as it existed and dump it somewhere in the garbage. Because it's really useless. Technologies for absolute perfect health. We've submitted all the patents. Do you understand? Technologies for this, technologies for that, technology. You know, there's no disease that human beings should be suffering from. Now, I don't have partners to work with, as you can imagine. You know, people don't work with me. So I do everything alone. I'm on my own in that sense. I've been alone for a very, very long time. So it doesn't really bother me. You understand? I even enjoy it in some sense. But the idea is to rid the world of this falsehood that is creating so many problems, you know? And the people who are doing this, they know that it's false. After all, I remember when I told you about your so-called book of Revelations, I said, do you think that the people who wrote this nonsense, this garbage, they think they didn't know about organized complexity? They're trying to replace you. They're trying to be you. They're trying to take your place in the world by creating a fake narrative about whiteness. There's no such thing. All this idea of races and it's all nonsensical. As nonsensical as possible. It's a poison that confirms that there's nobody in this world currently with power that can be trusted because they're all liars. They all came together to agree that they were going to exclude black Africans from everything you can imagine, because they're afraid of the return. Well, guess what, bitches? Not only did the return happen, everything about the return is here. Everything. You're all fucked.